Everyone's Classic DM. We've got a really cool video for you today. We're going to cover the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, a Dungeon Master's Guide. And this is going to be something that's going to help those of you who are old school, who still run these adventures. And those of you who haven't been able to run it for a long time, give you a chance to kind of lift the nostalgia of this classic module. It's one of my all-time favorites. You've probably heard me talk in the past about how much I love the Standing of the Hill Giant Chief, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, and of course, the Hall of Fire Giant King, which I've never covered. I should probably cover it pretty soon too. It's really big. But this one here has a cool history. I want to show you where it's located on the map, show you some great mapping resources, talk about some of the elements of this very, very short module that make it very deep and very complex and make it a lot of fun that you need to watch out for if you haven't run it in a long time. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to know is talk about what's the history of this thing. So, you know, in 1978, I think it's in July, they have these events called Origins. And in Origins in 1978 was when this module was first released. I believe the following year they ran it in a competition mode. They were doing a lot of these competitions back in the day. I've only ever played in a D&D competition in 1979. It was at a local shopping mall in Tallahassee, Florida. It was really a lot of fun. It was, you randomly hooked up with a bunch of people you didn't know. You're giving level 1 characters that you didn't know what class they're going to be. They had their spells already picked. They're like pre-gens. And you ran through this dungeon. It was a scoring system. And there was like 9 different dungeon masters running parties of 10 through this thing. Anyway, so around 1980, 81, when Dungeons & Dragons first started taking off, excuse me, the monochromatic covers like you see here on the left started to get rebranded. A lot more Jeff D and Rosoff art started appearing, and when they changed the TSR logo with the little wizard half moon on the left, the crescent moon, the cursive writing like it's done with calligraphy pens. So this is when the whole thing's taken off. But when the module was first written, it's probably one of the shortest modules of every single one of the AD&D dungeons ever created. Which doesn't mean it's bad, it's actually really good. But there's some things you need to do as a dungeon master to make it run better. So they combined G1, which is Standing of the Hill Giant Chief, G2, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, and G3, which is the Hall of the Fire Giant King, into one pack here, as you see in 1981, with a trade dress update. So if you don't have a copy of these, you have a few options. But let me tell you about what happened in 1999. A buddy of mine named Ed Stark used to be the creative director of Dungeons & Dragons. We got to work together on a Warhammer 40K game in Austin, Texas called Dark Millennium Online. He went on to go work at ZeniMax on the Elder Scrolls Online. I think he's been there ever since. So over 10 years. He's one of the quest writers over there on the Elder Scrolls Online. You should check it out. Really great guy. He was on D&D at TSR/Wizards of the Coast back when they were doing late 2nd edition, right before the Monty Cook thing with 3rd edition. The reason why would I mention this, the one on the far right here is the Silver Anniversary Edition from 1999, which I guess is like a 25-year or maybe a 20-year anniversary. It's in 2nd edition, okay? But it's still worth getting because it has updated maps. Speaking of maps, let's go ahead and jump in here. You know, in the original module with these monochromatic kind of cardboard covers, and inside is this staple bound, you know, almost like a Xerox copy, a real homebrew. You can get these things for like $4.99 today in PDF form and print them yourself. You can't get them print on demand, even from Drive Through RPG or from the DM Dungeon Masters Guild, which is the same thing, really. So on the left, we have the Upper Rift map, and on the right, we have the Caverns, which is below. Now imagine the Caverns map being beneath the Upper Rift and slid down, because there is a pathway that goes down to level 2. So it's not your typical birthday cake kind of a layout. You have this massive outdoor rift, which we're going to talk about in a minute, all these ice caverns, and then these stone caverns, and then this sloping passageway that goes down, down, down underground. And the underground area is really where their whole entire hold is, and that's where the lead villain and the guy that's ruling the place is. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too. Remember me mentioning about this silver edition that was done here? This one here, the one in the middle of the trade dress update in 81, they didn't really change anything. But for the 2nd edition one, what they did is they went through and redid the maps. They rotated it on its side. So I always thought that was kind of odd. The maps are still the 1 inch, you know, 1 square equals 10 feet, but they just rotated all the maps for whatever purposes. It seems to me when they did the Silver Edition update, they added so many ancillary and disconnected additional adventures to increase the value of this classic. They didn't just want to repeat what they had done before back here in 1981. Instead, they wanted to take this thing a little further. So they started doing these maps with little icons and better layouts on them, computer graphics to a certain degree. They're still black and white. And on every page, the maps only take up like a half a page. So you don't have this really, really big version of the map that you used to. They were still the same scale, though. Because remember, in 3rd edition, that's when the 1 inch equals 5 feet miniature stuff started really taking off. So there's a map of the rift. It's turned on its side with north to the left. Be sure to always remember that. Architecturally and in most maps, if you look at your Google Maps or what have you, north is always up. So they flipped it on its side, put a few elevation notations in here to make it clear, more of a hand-drawn look. And they also did the same thing with the lower level. And this is all in this Liberation of Jeff, or Geoff, however you want to pronounce it. I think it's Jeff, like Jeff Tate, the singer from Queensryche, which is a region in Greyhawk, which is something that's always been kind of interesting. If you go back in time and look at Greyhawk, you'll be like, where are these places? Like, try to find the Tomb of Horrors, try to find White Plume Mountain, try to find the Village of Hamlet. You'll find it's kind of tricky. You find Verbombonk, but you can't find, it doesn't clearly say this is where this is. And I think it's because Darlene did those maps before some of these adventures were ever even made. Going on with the maps here, once you get past this one here, you get to these modern day ones done by John Pintar. John Pintar is an incredible digital artist in the video game industry. He lives, I think he lives in Ljubljana, Slovenia, which is a beautiful country. Back when we were working at Crytek, we were doing a game called Game 04, where this assassin, kind of like Vincent in Collateral, is escorting this little girl across Europe, and he has to go all the way across Slovenia, across the salt fields and some of the old junkyards and some of the ice caverns and all kinds of neat stuff that's happening over there. Castle Bled. So John's maps are all over DM's Guild, and they're all over Drive-Thru-RPG. These two pictures here on your video screen or on your phone don't do it justice. You can zoom in. The detail level is incredible, and we do a couple of zoom ins later. The things that John did is he converted the grid to 1 inch equals 5 feet for modern day D&D 5e type players, right? He also took the liberty of like putting in detail, and if the room said it had beds in the corner, he put beds in there, and then he put a light source and little details. He didn't do too much. He would do just enough to kind of make it feel alive without changing the core idea behind the entire map. So that pretty much covers us for the maps. Let's talk about like, well, where is this place? Well, here's your classic World of Greyhawk. You know, this is a copy of all the map unfolded, so it's all goofy looking. And over here on the left-hand side of Greyhawk is the region where the adventure really takes place. Let's give you a better look at that. If you zoom into the left side, you see this really brown, reddish brown mountain chain called the Crystal Mist Mountains. Now, in reality, it's all frozen. It's not like lava mountains. But down below, as you go towards Drulea Bay, you see the Hell Furnaces, and that's where the Hall of Fire Giant King is. Now, if you look on the map here, you see I drew this little funny circle, the line on it. If you find this one region of the world called the Yeomanry, there's a little town called Loftwick. And in essence, the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl pretty much lines up with the letter A in mountains, which is why I've circled that region. And these hexes, I believe, are like 30 miles each. So on the left side kind of gives you an idea of what part of the world we're talking about when we blow it up over here to the right. Now, why is this important? Well, most of you old school guys, when you run a campaign, unless you're running in your own, individual world, you want to get players there. And sometimes some of the fun factors traveling from point A to point B. Now, in the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, they have this, infinity chain element where you can teleport by putting this chain on the ground and standing in an infinity symbol and all this kind of stuff. If your players don't do that, and if you're going to run this just as a good old-fashioned Christmas adventure in the snow, you're going to need to get the players there. I recommend you really use the real locations because it's far enough away from any town to be a situation where maybe younger players want to go back to town and cause trouble all the time. You kind of want to get them in the adventure, facing the adventure, staying in a cave nearby. And we'll talk about that in a minute too, because the module talks about where you can set up shop. Now, Anna B. Meyer, who's a well-known cartographer in the tabletop role-playing game community, makes these extremely high-resolution, absolutely beautiful maps for free. You should go check out her website. Just look for Anna B. Meyer. This is a zoomed-out version of Greyhawk, and as you can see, she's taken the mountains and ranges where they're tall and put snow on top of them, which makes a lot more sense. So if you start to zoom in, you find this thing on the map, on her map, called the Hole of Grognor. And Grognor is actually the Frost Giant Jarl, and Jarl being like our music in the background, kind of like a Viking chieftain type of a person, like a king. And you can see I drew these little yellow lines on here. You can see the town of Loftwick to the east, where it's all green of the yeomanry. And if you draw a line from Loftwick all the way to the other side of the Crystal Mist Mountains, you'll see basically that the hold of Grognor is kind of just to the left of the half a tank of gas side, right? And so if you divide it up into quarters, you have a pretty good idea of where this place is. Now, if you look a little closer, you'll see a place called Griffin's Reach, which is right up here. I'll move my mouse cursor around. You may be able to see my little X cursor here. Let's put the hand cursor on here. You may be able to see the hand better. You see this area right here? So there's a keep. Griffin's Reach is up here, which is a keep symbol. You want to kind of like maybe figure out like, how does that fit in? Is it necessary? Is it not? Is it 20, 30, 40 miles away? Do people take this little path that comes from Kelzad all the way through these weaving mountains to get to here and then go down to here? So when you think about how do you want to get your players to the adventure, that's really important. All right, great. Enough about maps. Let's talk about some of the basics here. Now, we're not going to run through every single room, but we're going to give you this overview of the things to watch out for in this module, because it's really short, and if you aren't prepared, you can kind of screw things up. So as I mentioned a moment ago, this adventure is basically all anchored around these frost giants led by Grognor, who's the Lord of Frost Giants, or the Jarl, right? And so your mission originally, and if you read the module as it's written, is to gather intelligence and who's behind, the unholy alliance of Hill, Stone, and Frost Giants. Now, unless you've been living on a rock, we all know that the Drow are involved. I know everyone gives me a hard time for how I say it. Just get over it. It's been embedded in my vocabulary since I was 12, so we always call it the Drow, Vault of the Drow. Maybe we call it Dro or something like that. But anyway, so if you played the setting of the Hill Giant Chief, or you played all these modules years ago, you know there's an alliance. But in this one, the focus is primarily on the Frost Giants. In the setting of the Hill Giant Chief, in the big chieftain campfire feasting room, there's stone giants and all kinds of different giants like visiting. And we do have some interesting characters coming to pay visit to the Frost Giant Jarl, and he's much smarter, wiser, and wealthier than the counterpart was in the setting of the Hill Giant Chief. So I kind of highlighted these elements to make sure it's really important here. Now, if you just want to read it yourself, you can do that. But this is amidst the tallest mountain peaks. It's the stronghold of Grognor, Lord of the Frost Giants. As Frost Giants have been amongst those who have been in the reaving bands, the party is to deal with them as the Hill Giants have been dealt with. Death and destruction are to be meted out to the Frost Giants in the same measure they gave to the peoples below. Those members of the party who have participated in the raid upon the steading of the Hill Giant Chief will know that their most important mission, however, is to garner intelligence as to what or who is behind the unholy alliance of Hill, Stone, and Frost, and possibly other types of giants as well. Any such information gained is to be delivered by the fastest means to the nobles sponsoring the expedition. That's an element you're going to need to figure out. That's why I mentioned that keep in some of these nearby towns. Maybe those areas are funding it, or maybe other areas further afield are funding it. While the party is to follow up clues in order to prosecute offenders, any treasure taken is to be kept by the party. This is their reward for the perils they must face, and they are bound to face many in the weird ice caves and rocky caverns of the Jarl. The evil root is deeply grown here, far worse than among the Hill Giants. So, we're reading this kind of dramatically. You should read this to your players, right? If you have not already set the stage or haven't come from the steading the Hill Giant Chief, you're going to need to kind of omit the mentioning of the steading. And you're also going to need to, or steeding, however you pronounce it, I think it's steading. You're also going to need to create kind of a mission, and who's the person that sent you out here? How much have they supplied you? Do you have guides, etc.? So it's a really neat adventure because it's way out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness. So there's some more details let's talk about that are related to the location itself. And remember me mentioning a few minutes ago about you don't want it to be near a town because players have a tendency to go break into shops and steal shit all the time, right? So this start section is really important. You wouldn't want to read this to the players, but you may need to like paraphrase and describe some of the details about this hidden cave. So it is assumed that the party has either followed a map obtained at the steading or used the magical chain found there to arrive in the neighborhood of the Glacial Rift. If they spend a few hours searching the area, they will discover a hidden cave in which they can safely hide themselves, their mounts, equipment, and even treasure if they take minimum precautions with respect to keeping their hiding place secret. For example, do not lead pursuers to the spot, make undue noise there, etc. In any event, The same search will also reveal the rift. The thick arrow indicates the beaten path with the giants followed to enter the place. Now, if you're reading that to someone, they don't know what you're talking about. This is really DM information for you. It's letting you know about the map. And now it's going to describe to you how it's laid out, right? There are 2 icy ledges along either face of the rift. That's going to be on the east and the west side. Both slope slightly downward with occasional high steps, which combine to make the path progress from 250 feet above the bottom of the rift at the beginning to only 150 feet above at the far ends to the south. The 2 paths are indicated by slender arrows. The dark outline is the rift, and the openings along it are the entrances to caves and tunnels in its face. Caves and caverns can be from 25 to 45 feet high. Tunnels and passageways between 20 and 30 foot ceiling height. Party may travel on the surface of the glacier/mountain over the caves shown to circumvent the whole rift if they desire. Ropes can be lowered to gain access to the ledges below from about 50 to 150 feet depending on position, as the rim and the ledges are covered by ice and snow. Then there's a bunch of rules here, and this used to happen a lot in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I won't read it, but they used to always have these like, here's a made-up rule just for this adventure. You know, these aren't like global rules saying like a 1 in 6 on a d6 indicates a party member has slipped and fallen. Like, are they going to fall and die in the first 5 minutes of the adventure? So these kinds of things are interesting. As a dungeon master, we've often encountered this, especially in like the Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-shan, and especially in the Tomb of Horrors, where a room has a specific little d6 check that, you know, with a 20% chance of a player dying forever or getting a disease. So you want to probably mitigate that to some degree, or leave it that way. If your party really enjoys the scariness and is very good at describing what they're doing and how they're being careful and what kind of mountaineering equipment they have, if you have those really detailed players like that who do that, then leave it there. So the whole place is windy and very cold. Visible atop the rift is about 150 feet. That means invisibility, not visible. So you can't see too far. You know, 100 feet is going to be what, about 30 yards in a football field? So this is about a 45, 50 yard distance you can view. Then it's just too whited out, too much fog. The wind at the bottom of the rift is worse still, and visibility there is only 30 feet. So imagine like that scene from one of the Star Trek original series where Sulu and the guys are trapped down on the planet's surface and they're having to use a phaser to heat up a rock. Remember that? So imagine like the blasting wind, or in that other movie that George Clooney did, I forgot what it's called, where it's like in the world and people are off in space. He's up at an Arctic station and he's like walking around having blood transfusions, and he's wandering through the snow to turn on these like, you know, radar things to communicate with the deep space ship that's going to like a moon of Jupiter. Anyway, there's a part in that film where like the snow is so heavy you can't see beyond it. That's an interesting detail because most games, even video games, no one ever really takes in consideration visibility and what can you see at the bottom. So that's kind of important. The floor of the rift is a maze of snow and ice hillocks and mounds with peaks of ice and rocks thrusting up here and there like fangs. Movement through this hollow maze of cold is reduced to 50% of normal. It's almost like the Shining maze, right? Due to the wind force and eddy currents, levitation or flying there will cause movement in a random direction equal to 1/2 the distance. Another little special rule. So the thing to consider here is that when people look at the map, like let's go back up to our map slide here and go back over this again. Let's use one of the Pentar maps. You know, it doesn't look like it just looks like a frozen lake that people ice skate on. We're looking at this left side here, the upper section. But remember, this is all like snow berms full of snow. It's blasting wind. You can't really tell where you're going. So, you know, when you're playing this adventure and the scale is so massive, it's very easy to like show the players this entire, you know, rift canyon, and they wouldn't be able to see that far. I mean, it'd be like a fog of war thing, like in a real-time strategy game. So that makes it hard for you as a DM to go, how am I going to draw this? How am I going to reveal over time what they can see? What are they going to do to make sure they don't, you know, get lost or and things like that? So that's a really important detail. You got this picture over here on the right of someone rappelling down and a frost giant going, hey, you, what are you doing? So that's really important detail to think about. There's another one. Besides all the navigating the rift and the ledges that are around either side, we also want to think about there's ice caves and there's stone caves. A lot of people kind of look at the map until you see the John Pentar map. It doesn't make any sense. For example, let's go back to the original map. If you go back all the way to the original map, you know there's a ledge running around here, and there's a face here. You have to cut through the cave to get to the other side, and there's ledge going up here and a ledge over here. And even when you look at this one here, it even tell you the elevation of the ledges above the floor of the rift. And you have some markers that are black to be like piles of snow. We all know the Remorhaz here is at 28. but they don't really, until you see John Pentar's maps, then you realize, like, wait a minute, this is all blue and this is all gray and rock. Well, there's a reason for that, because John paid attention to this when he's making these maps, which is one thing about his maps I find to be absolutely awesome, is that the northern section of the caves and caverns are basically formed from ice. And I got a little random picture off the web here to show you an ice cavern that's in Alaska. Now, it's got a modern day person there just for scale, right? With a few areas of rock here and there. In these areas of faint greenish light will make torches or similar lights unnecessary. Fireballs used in such area will make the footing within the area of effect very slippery, chance to fall, etc., etc. Another thing to think about is throughout the entire adventure, there are a lot of locations that have boulders as if they're being used as doors or to keep the weather out. And it's something that's really easy to miss. There's situations where there'll be like a little boulder blocking the entrance to one of these places, like here at area 20. Like, you don't see it everywhere. Like, there's a boulder right here at 11, and some of the other places are all wide open. So the reason why I would mention that is it's something that's just such a small little one-sentence detail. It's just so easy to miss because they have rules about these boulders are put there by the frost giants, you know, to kind of like block the entrance, to keep the wind out more than anything. So they give you some rules here on how, like, you know, a character 18 strength can move it by themselves. Otherwise, it takes 3 persons with kind of normal strength to move them. There's boulders down the lower level as well. So that's something else to think about. So remember, you're going to have ice in some areas. And let's just take a look at that here. You got ice caverns in the northern areas. It's all in blue. And then down below, you start have areas where this isn't ice, this is stone. So they're actually caverns, okay? So that's something that most people miss out on, because there could be major gameplay effects, especially in this area here, if you start blasting away with certain types of spells. Like, what would happen if you start casting lightning bolt when it's frozen ice everywhere, right? Think about that for a minute. So let's go to some more details. This module, because it's one of the very early ones done in this monochromatic format, the little cardboard covers and everything, is they don't block out for you what to read to the party. And it's very easy to realize that you've read too much detail. So be sure to grab a pen, and if you've got a printed copy of this, or if you're going to highlight it on a PDF, whatever you want to do, be sure to read through these things and mark what you can read here and what you should not read. And it's not clear unless you really take a look at the module. And that's one thing that's really important. Like, for example, in this area 5, right? The giants have frozen 8 corpses of mutilated victims, standing them upright in blocks of transparent ice. Evidently, those are meant to frighten off any trespassers. The bodies are obviously hacked and very much dead, not merely frozen whole. But in the next sentence, if you're not paying attention, each of these corpses has valuable items inside the ice. I mean, it's immediately tipping players off what to do. And this is in this area here. In the original map, you'll see with this little cul-de-sac here, there's no boulder blocking this area to 3, and there's all these blocks of ice are against the wall here. They're not out in the center. But when John did his, he decided to kind of put these, you know, frozen spikes sticking up. So it's artistic liberty. So you need to, the reason why I mention this is you're going to want to compare the map and the description. And when you're either drawing this for your players or showing stuff to them, they don't want to be, oh, where are the ice spikes? Let me go check those out. You want to kind of make sure you understand that, hey, there's blocks of ice of people frozen on the inside. That's going to happen in a couple places throughout this adventure. So in essence, the theme for you to do is to make sure you compare the old school map. It's like $4.99 for the PDF, good Lord, and versus John Pentar stuff, which isn't very expensive either. You can probably get a copy of John's stuff on the, some of the stuff is still free on the web, some of the stuff is not. Let's talk about another thing. When you go down to the lower level, right, in this area 6, this is in the cavern area. This is no longer ice caves at all. Area 6 has Ogre Magi in it, right? And it has these little markers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, I put little red dots on the map on John Pentar's map, which has beds and a little table that can be gambling or doing whatever Japanese ogres like to do on the weekend. But if you read the actual description of what's going on here, you know, it's not breaking it down at all for what to read to the players. Like, unlike the other ones, you'll have these entries where the first 2 sentences you can read to the players. And this one here, you'd have to highlight some details and maybe try to have the player, you know what's going on, but you're going to have to figure a way to present this, especially when there's an Ogre Magi standing right here in the doorway. Well, he's probably facing the guys playing, you know, a dice game on the table or counting money. So you need to read the details and come up with something that feels real. Let's go through this real quickly here. 5 Ogre Magi recently arrived from their lord of their kind. They had an audience with the Jarl, and after a special wassail, which is kind of a Christmas celebration, to be held on the morrow, the next day, they will depart for home with a treaty scroll. The scroll is signed a special mark by the Jarl and offers the Lord of the Ogre Magi 100,000 gold piece value in gems, plus whatever loot his minions garner if they will join the war upon mankind in this territory. That doesn't mean they have it with them. It means they've been promised this. Each monster, each one of the Ogre Magi, bears a pouch with 10 500 gold piece gems, which are tokens from the Jarl. A small iron cask holds a gift to the Lord of Ogre Magi. It is a trick box with 18 plates of platinum worth 100 gold each, 18 plates of electrum, 10 gold each, and 18 plates of silver, 2 gold each. They slide in secret combinations to open a small magical box of holding. Although the container is but 10 inches long by 6 inches wide and only 4 inches deep, smaller than a shoebox, where are we at? It will hold 3 cubic feet of material, or 3,000 gold pieces of weight, which is about 300 pounds, whichever's less. The box opens by sliding plates on the left, then the top, then the right end, platinum, electrum, silver order to each end, and reverse the top. So you think about that. You've got this little box, and you got these little plates, these bars, like gold bars, for these different types of elements, platinum, electrum, and silver. But maybe the bottom ones are the ones that are actually attached to the bottom, and those are the ones you slide around like a puzzle from the 70s to open up the box. And it has a trap on it, right? And it has, you only use 2 potions of Frost Giant Control and Cloud Giant Strength. Leader group wears a necklace of fireballs. He will not hesitate to use it. So you're going to have to really think to yourself, like, okay, what's going on when the players come in here? Do they sneak in here? Do they send in their thief hiding in shadows? Does he slink around this area here? Is this guy asleep, or is he sitting on the edge of the bed? Are these guys sitting in the chairs playing games? What's this guy over here doing? Is he sitting on the edge of the bed? Is he reading a Tom Clancy novel? Like, what's happening? So this is an example of what makes Dungeons & Dragons awesome. You're given everything you need to know, but you're not being railroaded into the drama of what this scene is, right? So you can determine what to do to make it cool for your players based on the style of gameplay your players have. And that's one of the things about these old modules I think is just absolutely amazing. That's pretty much what we wanted to talk about. Pay attention to those details, get a hold of the maps, make sure you read all the elements on every single entry, understand the different types of caves, have a real good visual sense of what's at the bottom of the rift. And when your players go in here, it's tons of hack and slash. The monsters don't have a lot of health. They have a large party, some really crazy encounters. At the very last area where their big wassail is happening, a lot of crazy stuff can go down there as too. So it's one of my favorite all-time adventures. It has such a great theme to it. It's so unique. A lot of people have covered it on YouTube. So what I'm trying to do here is bring something to the table a little bit different. So if you made it this far in the video, be sure to, let's do it in a different order. Just subscribe to the channel and hit like. That way you won't miss anything new. We're trying to push to 5,000 subscribers, so tell your friends. We appreciate the help, and we'll talk to you again real soon. You take care. You guys have a great Veterans Day.